Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin Eoin. It's Monday, and today producer Dave is out sick. But Rock Fight consigliere Owen Comerford is here to talk through a handful of the bigger stories that hit the outdoor industry last week. But before we get to that, make sure you come back to the Rock Fight this Wednesday when outdoor journalist Justin Hausman and I will be talking about some of the latest headlines that come out of the outdoor adventure community. And if you come back on Friday, you'll either hear me talking to some notable industry voice on industry topics, or you'll get one of my patented outdoor hot takes. It's Monday today, so you only have one more day to subscribe to Rock Fight's weekly newsletter, News from the Front, that comes out each and every Tuesday. Head to rockfight.co. Click on the little pop-up that opens up when you get to the website, or click join the mailing list to sign up. Oh, and actually, while you're there, we're running a survey. We want to hear from you, so the Rock Fight listeners, so head to rockfight.co as well, sign up for News from the Front, and then take our survey. And if you're new around here, please subscribe and join the Rock Fight by hitting the follow button on whatever podcast app you are listening to us on. Give us that 5-star rating. It's the best way to support the show. And stick around. We'll be right back. You're listening to Rock Fight Radio. Oh, you got DJ CT back with you spinning the hits, and it's that time because we have another new song from that hit machine, Fitz. And Fitz wants to ask you, why just settle for a smart sock when you can opt for a smarter sock?
You've got a million choices lying on the floor. Thin ones, thick ones, even some you never wore. But there's a sock whose specs rise above the rest. Don't settle for a smart one when the smarter sock is best. Opt for the smarter sock. Fitz. Fitz is the smarter sock. Fitz. Whole foot comfort is the answer to the question of the knit. Fitz. Opt for the smarter sock. Fitz. Whole foot comfort is the goal. It's only common sense with 4 different patents. The difference is immense. The Y line's added volume really is legit. To the next level comfort of the fit we call Fitz. Opt for the smarter sock. Fitz. Fitz is the smarter sock. Fitz. Whole foot comfort is the answer to the question of the knit. Fitz. Opt for the smarter sock. Fitz. The smarter sock. Fitz. Fitz is the smarter sock. Fitz. Whole foot comfort is the answer to the question of the knit. Fitz. Opt for the smarter sock. Fitz.
And now, back to the show. All right, apparently that mile-high air was a little too dry and thin for producer Dave, as he was with me at the Outdoor Market Alliance media event last week. So he's taking a sick day, but our own outdoor industry insider, Owen Comerford, he's here. What's going on, Owen?
Not much. I mean, I'm still here in Key Largo, but you're the traveling man. How was the show? I mean, it sounds like all that anyone could talk about was Rock Fight and basically, did anyone bribe you like to get on the higher up the brand list?
Thankfully, to get on the top 5 list.
Yeah, I could, just a little,
I got many more thank yous and scowls than I was maybe anticipating for that list for sure. And then a few promises of how the accessories list is coming. Yeah, some people are like, oh man, we didn't, or a couple we were happy to be mentioned.
Okay,
those kinds of things. Right. The folks at XPED were pumped. The folks at MSR were pumped.
Okay.
We heard from on LinkedIn last week, Wiley over at Rumple, just happy to be included.
There you go. That's good. I mean, as long as there were no threats of bodily harm or anything.
No, more fear. I'm a little like, oh man, I better get my presentation right. We're worried what we might say. I'm like, hey man, like
we're nice. I think even when we're mean, we're nice. I think, but no, I'm nice. You, I don't know, maybe not.
That's what you got to. Well, I'm sitting in the hot seat. I got to be black or white. You bring the gray.
Okay. In more ways than one, but yes.
That's right. You're not that much older than me. But the one, I think I mentioned it on the reaction with Doug on Friday, but we got to spend some time with the GM of Marmot. And I'm excited to share some stuff like on the pod down the road on that one. That was a great conversation.
Are we going to get him on? Do you think he'll join us here?
I think we're going to try to get him on.
That'll be
He was
awesome.
a really good guy. I'll tease the listeners. The one thing that he said, and he's listened to all of our Marmot content, and even in our survey, which I mentioned in the open that we're running, had a handful of, hey man, lay off of Marmot kind of comments. His takeaway, and this is all tease, and then we'll hopefully have John on down the road. was that his takeaway from all of our criticisms were that we actually love the brand Marmot.
100%.
And I'm like, you get it. Like, we're not trying to just beat you guys up, but you're kind of the poster child for where this can go. And he's like, yeah, you're right. So
yeah, if we didn't care about the brand, it wouldn't even come up.
Oh, or we'd just be way more mean.
No, yeah.
So, but hey, so let's get going today. We've got a bunch of things to talk about. Today's opening shot is, of course, presented by Garage Grown Gear, your hub for ultralight gear. Learn more by heading to garagegrowngear.com, and we'll tell you a little bit more about them in a few minutes. But the first story we want to talk about, and if you read Owen's post on LinkedIn last week about our first story, then you know I think he's going to be giddy today to talk about here in the show. There was a little sense of delight in every word on your post last week, Owen. So, because last week, Kontoor Brands, Kontoor spelled Kontoor, which is a spinoff of VF, and known for owning the Wrangler and Lee denim brands, acquired Helly Hansen, the iconic 148-year-old outdoor apparel brand from Canadien Tire Corporation, for $900 million. And on the surface, I think you could say this is just another, outdoor brand acquisition like we see pretty regularly. But, and there are some deeper feelings resonating across this deal. So why don't you share some insights that you posted last week over on LinkedIn?
Yeah, no, I giddy, I think is how I would describe myself when this came out. Because, and right, if you're not inside the industry, it was just like, okay, another acquisition, no big deal. But, this is just... karma's a bitch. I mean, so okay, let me just give kind of the background here. So Kontoor Brands, basically, it was created in 2019 when then head of VF Corp, Steve Rendell, and the cool kids, North Face, Timberland, Vans, etc., they decided, you know what, this boring denim stuff that, Wrangler and Lee, it's sold at Walmart, like, it's way too for us. It's actually holding us back. And it's distracting the market just from how awesome we are. And so if we could just...
This is like peak VF, right? This is kind of like the peak of their powers.
Oh, yeah. And so they're like, if we could just get rid of them, spin them out, separate company, then we have all these really prized assets. And so therefore, obviously, our valuation will skyrocket, and they can do whatever the hell they want to do, right? And so they spun it out into this separate group called Kontoor. Don't ask me where the name came from. But then fast forward today, okay, and VF stock is off by more than 2/3, right? And obviously they're in the middle of a pretty rough restructuring, but it feels like they're on the bounce back now at least. So kudos to them. Meanwhile, Kontoor Brands, the boring denim brands, so called, their stock has more than doubled since the spin out. Right, so a huge reverse in fortunes between the two, and I think some people may say, well, Owen, you're kind of projecting or something onto this that really is this wasn't personal at all. No, that's bullshit. It totally was personal. This is a quote from Scott Baxter, who's the CEO of Kontoor, in WWD. I guess, do we still call it Women's Wear Daily? I don't know.
I think it's just I think it's WWD now.
WWD. This is a quote from him last year. "We were not wanted. That produces a huge chip on your shoulder to say, oh, really? Okay, well, we'll show you." I mean, come on.
So what is there, when we say spinoff too, I mean, it was like, well, how did that, what's the structure of Kontoor? It's its own company, right? There is no relation with VF anymore, right? And when we say spinoff, it's like, here are these brands, somebody came along, purchased them, and started Kontoor. Is that accurate?
No. So basically, the way spinoffs work in the public markets is the idea is to take one corporation, right, and then you cut it into two. And so basically, in that scenario, if you owned VF Corp stock, okay, you would continue to have a share of VF Corp, but now you also get a share of this new company. Okay, so it wasn't sold to anybody. I guess you could say it was sold to the shareholders, but no, you basically split the company in two, and then your old share of VF Corp, now you've got two companies, two shares, one for Kontoor, one for VF.
So is it the board operates both of these?
No, and then they're split off into separate boards. They're totally separate companies. The concept, usually spinoffs are done in order to unlock value within the company. So, like in this case, the thought process was, well, let's spin off these sort of less sexy assets because they're holding back the sexy assets, right? And it's
Right.
similar to the whole there's a bad bank strategy you'll hear, which is similar to what we talked about last week with Marmot and with the Newell outdoor brands. I mean, what Newell could potentially do is create a spinoff. So it's against a separate company called Newell Outdoor, or probably something totally different. That would be a separate stock, and what that would then do is if you pull those companies out of the financials for Newell, let's say, then the overall financial picture looks a lot better because it doesn't have the drag on the business that it had. So so it was a spin out. I mean, literally, or cast off, if
created
you will.
an entirely separate company. Based on the fact that like you said, I mean, look, Baxter's quote confirms it. We are not the cool kids. These are the cool kids kicking out the not cool kids from school. And now 6 years later, one is maybe they're coming back a little bit, but they're definitely not where they're not where they were. No. And this one is growing to the point where it's buying almost $1 billion brand.
Right. And like I said in my LinkedIn post, they could have bought. I mean, okay, they're in acquisition mode, which is cool. They could have bought one of 100 different denim or fashion brands, right? But no, they chose to buy a major outdoor brand in Helly Hansen. Okay, now believe me, they're very smart, disciplined people. It's not like they just did this just to raise the middle finger to VF Corp. But was that part of the joy in the process? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it was. And in talking to some ex-VF and North Face insiders, there was not a lot of love lost between Baxter and Rendell in particular. And the other thing I would tell you is Rendell was also the architect of the whole move to Denver thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which
from Alameda,
and that created a lot of ill will, I would say, within that the company. Less than half the people actually moved from Alameda to Denver. So there's this whole diaspora of ex-VF North Face folks out in the industry that are all just loving this. I mean, loving it.
All right, so there is the fuck you of it all, which I love this too. Frankly, I didn't know anything that you told me, but I like to see more of this in the outdoor industry. It's like an episode of Succession playing out, but in our world for a change.
Exactly.
Usually it's just like, usually we're just criticizing boneheaded decisions by brands and big companies. And like, this is sort of like all right, nice. Like Logan Roy is at the helm right now. But beyond that, so let's talk about Helly Hansen for a second. So they're not quite $1 billion brand. I'm not sure their history is iconic. Like I said, it's a nearly 150-year-old brand. What's the upside potential, right? So like, why choose Helly? Is it just they're kind of a steady Eddie and they can kind of sit there and like compete against a North Face, even if they don't grow that much more? Or is there upside with Helly in your opinion?
Well, there's definite upside. A very iconic brand, international. Obviously, they've got a huge presence
global,
in the EU and here in North America. Multi-activity, obviously big in outdoor, but big in sailing and in other areas as well. And again, almost $1 billion. There aren't that many, billion-dollar-ish outdoor brands, and so it's a big platform that you can really move on. And then lots of technologies. They've got a really interesting synthetic base layer technology. I mean, there's a lot of elements there that I think could be really interesting to push further into, whether it be ski, snow, lifestyle, going more after core outdoor, if you want to go after, hike, mountain lifestyle, et cetera. So I think it'll be interesting. And, that's the thing, is that obviously a lot of the team from Kontoor came from VF Corp. And actually, Scott actually was the group president of the outdoor and active sports group for VF before he took on the role at Kontoor. So he knows this industry, right? And I'm sure has a playbook in terms of how to take this acquisition to the next level.
Probably a good sign for Helly Hansen is I don't know if we've ever mentioned them more than a handful of times in the over 2 years we've been doing this podcast, right? And part of that, I think they're steady Eddie in this probably, they're the outdoor side, to your point, but they have a huge workwear presence as well, right? They are big on crabbing boats, like fishermen wear their stuff. I mean, so like there is an evergreen segment of their business that I believe is very meaningful versus the North Face, which seems more reliant on fashion and obviously outdoor technical proficiency with like mountaineers and things like that in terms of their brand image anyway. So pretty interesting, actually.
Yeah, the workwear thing is really interesting, right? Because obviously, also VF has gone after that with its Dickies acquisition. So it's actually competing on multiple levels there, and there is a workwear aspect to Wrangler as well. And
Sure.
so, I think that there's a number of different potential plays that you could leverage with this. So yeah, it's going to be really really interesting to see where they take it. The other thing I would say is it's great to have a new acquisitive player on the chessboard here in the outdoor industry, because there are a lot of
Yeah.
brands that historically would get to a certain size. You get to like 100 million and it's like, well, okay, what's the next step, right? Is it going to be another private equity firm, or who's going to acquire you? Like a Cotopaxi would be an example, right? It's like, who's going to,
Right.
what's the next step there? And in the past you might have thought the F Corp. I don't know that they're in the acquisition mode right now. They've still got a lot of work to do on their balance sheet. But you think of other up and coming brands, like I think of like Bedrock Sandals, and I don't know anything about Bedrock
Yeah.
Sandals. I don't know if they're on the market looking for whatever, but like I just think of a brand like that, up and coming. Where could it go to if those founders were looking for an exit, and this could be the place, because the next logical step here, you've got your apparel anchor. Do you start to add footwear like the F Corp did
Right.
with Timberland and Ultra and others? So yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
Well, the next thing that happened last week that we need to talk about is Kim Kardashian's SKIMS was back in the news this past week after last month's collaboration with the North Face that sold out in mere minutes, and then also caused a stir within the outdoor industry. I think it's safe to say. It was announced that SKIMS wouldn't just be collaborating with a new partner, but would in fact be creating a whole new brand with Nike, of all people. The brand has a bit of a clunky name where it's just NikeSKIMS. But it shows how important SKIMS has become in a relatively short amount of time. Nike sees SKIMS as a partner to help capture a larger share of female fans, according to what we've been reading online. Additionally, SKIMS has become a force, which I think maybe people aren't recognizing when it comes to this brand. They launched a men's part of its line recently and established partnerships with both the NBA and the WNBA, and currently carries a $4 billion valuation. Now, I know everybody, again, in the sort of inside baseball part of the outdoor industry, they're going to immediately point to the environmental criticisms that comes with SKIMS, and those are totally valid. That's something that we would all like to see them improve on. But I think the overall point of what we spoke about with the North Face collaboration, it's a great move for both brands. It makes a lot of sense, and when you kind of see what both parties bring to the table, it really does help both of them out. So, what were your thoughts when you saw this move by these brands?
The environmental thing obviously is a big concern. This actually may be good news from that perspective, because a lot of the pushback on SKIMS is just the total lack of any kind of transparency about what they are doing and the impact that they are
Right.
having. And if the product is produced by Nike, I think you will start to see much more transparency, right? But based upon the supply chain that they have and the processes that they have. So I think that's, I would say, some good news potentially. Yeah, ultimately, I think it's an interesting play. Nike's women's business has lagged a little bit, and just reading some of the feelings out there, I think the female side of the business always felt like a very very not even close to second place within the Nike world, and then obviously
Right.
with the money behind men's pro athletics versus women's, there was this second class citizen feeling, I think, within the whole Nike universe. So this is interesting because obviously it's very much a female first brand. Yes, there's a men's piece to it, but let's face it, it's a women's brand. So it could give that sense of this is for us piece of it. But yeah, I think it's an interesting play. Some of the criticism that I've seen out there is, hey, they were just, Elliot Hill, who is the CEO that came back and is going to rebuild
Yeah.
Nike. I think he came back in October. A big part of his push has been, we need to get back to basics, get back to the core of what made Nike great. It's amazing, an inspiring product. It's an inspiring branding. It's really getting back and working with athletes and all those pieces. And I think you could argue, well, this is not that. Okay.
Sure.
So
But it doesn't really derail any of that either, though, because they are like you made a note in our outline. This is not just a collaboration. This isn't a collection. This is its own brand.
Right.
Right. So they are obviously, there's going to have its own go-to-market strategy that comes with it. They're going to have their own products that are branded NikeSKIMS, and so whatever is happening on the return to specialty kind of initiative that Elliott is putting into place, I imagine, I mean, this could be a part of it. I imagine it will be to a certain extent, but it doesn't have to necessarily derail any of those efforts either, does it?
No, it doesn't. I think the interesting thing here is that they didn't just buy Skims, right? Because ultimately, by doing this, they are going to increase the value of Skims even more. So, and Skims is getting at a $4 billion valuation. They're getting a pretty nice multiple there. My understanding is they're doing about $1 billion right now in revenue. So they're getting a 4x multiple on revenue, which is really quite nice. So yeah, why not just buy them and then create NikeSKIMS and just go off to the races there? Because actually, Nike's stock was up $6 billion on this news, right? So
interesting.
So they could have potentially had sort of almost the market pay for the acquisition, if you will, right?
Yeah, and I mean, Skims, they achieved that $4 billion valuation originally in 2023, and it hasn't budged, right? They've kind of just been where they've been. So I wonder, they may have been open to it, I would think, right? Because maybe isn't there an opportunity that it could have even decreased in value in the coming years, or do you think it would have only grown?
Well, I think this will certainly help it grow, right?
Yeah, right.
And it'll actually, if Nike does ultimately purchase Skims, unless there's more to this deal than we know about, it'll just increase the price that they'll have to pay for a brand that they basically helped build,
that they helped grow. Yeah, right.
Right. And I think it's an interesting play. One though that certainly draws a lot of reactions from all sides of the LinkedIn universe, and there doesn't seem to be people in the middle. It's either like you hate this and you think it's the worst thing ever, or this is genius. And the people that hate it hate it.
And it's much like the TNF thing. I understood the TNF blowback on a certain level because you have an outdoor brand that's an iconic outdoor brand that has made the environment a big part of its marketing and its identity. And you have now, they're partnering with a brand who, like to your point, is a terrible environmental score. So why, how do you kind of square those things, VF and the North Face? I understand that's a valid question. Nike's consumers don't expect that. I'm sure Nike has its own, emissions plant goals and environmental goals that are well stated, but it's not the same expectations, fair or unfair, that maybe there should be as there is on a North Face. So I don't think that it's really a valid comparison between the two, at least in the court of public opinion. But also, with this being the second one in a month and kind of seeing a similar reaction, it's really hard not to look at this as a completely sexist point of view, that it is, or even just a bias at minimum against Kim Kardashian, which I understand she's a divisive figure. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about how she has grown to prominence and has earned her money. Look, it's 2025. She built $1 billion company. Yeah. Right? I mean, it's like follow the money and the opportunity here, and you'll figure out why they did these things. I had a chance to talk with Shante Salabert, who does work with the Rock Fight, and listeners, you're going to hear more from her on this show and some other areas going forward. And she's an amazing writer and journalist. She had the opportunity to interview Kourtney Kardashian and went to their house a few years ago. This is, I think, pre the show, or maybe at the beginning parts of the show. Her takeaway was what she told me is like, this family has worked for what they have. Like, this was not just sort of they stumbled into being like a really wealthy family. Like, this has been a strategy. This has been well thought out. Smart. These people hustle for what they got. Now, if you don't like that, I think this is just the example for me of like, don't hate the game, not the player. Like, these people game the system and are succeeding because of it. And you can hate Skims all you want because of Kim Kardashian. Like, oh well, she's earned it.
Yeah, she has, and I would say though, she gets a lot of credit for Skims, and realistically, actually, there is the folks behind Skims who really built. I mean, she's the face,
right?
But
she's the face, though, right?
But yeah, and I think also some of the subtle sexism that I see here is, women only buy Skims because Kim Kardashian is the face of Skims, and it's like, well,
That's like the dumbest thing ever.
Right. It's like, well, okay, hold on a second.
Not to a $4 billion level. I mean, come on, or $1 billion in sales, whatever it is.
Right. There's no doubt that Kim Kardashian being part of it gave it a brand and got it in front of a lot of people, 100%. But
right.
People don't continue to buy that product because of that. They're buying Skims because of the way that it fits, because of the way that it makes them feel, because of the way that it makes them look, and they want that, right? And if North Face can capture some of that in this new brand, I think, but take it into more of a pure athleisure play. I mean, you're going to see a lot of leggings. You're going to see, you're going to see a lot of this brand going right at Lululemon. I mean, that's the bullseye, right? It's like, that's who we want, right? Yes, it's performance, but it's not really. It's in that sort of athleisure place. I think part of the reaction to the brand, and I was just thinking about this personally myself, because I definitely had more of a problem with the North Face one than I have with this, but I think that's more of an Eoin thing, because the North Face brand means a lot more to me personally. And so when something like this comes along, it's like, oh no, that's attacking my worldview of what this brand is. Whereas Nike is like, Nike, right? To me. Whereas obviously there are people out there where Nike is everything. And so I can certainly see where some people take this more personally than others, if you see what I'm saying.
I do, and I think this is an opportunity this is an Inside Baseball podcast. Most people who listen to it are the ones who are probably speaking up about this or who have opinions about this, and this is a reminder of frankly, the greenwashing in the industry, right? It's like, if all these things, if the things we're getting mad about here were important broadly, these things wouldn't happen. We wouldn't have, overconsumption. Everybody would care about what we're making and what's in the stuff that we make. This is the stuff that those of us on the inside, we know and get upset about it. The larger public, to your point, buy based off of, they're all, impulse and passion and, I want that type of purchases,
right,
but that they probably weren't even planning on making that day until they walked into a store and saw something and goes, ooh, I want that. And if all of us are honest with ourselves, we all do the same thing, even though we know better, right? How many times have I walked into a store and been like, oh, okay, I'm totally buying that shirt. I don't care what was in it. I don't care where it was made. I don't care how much it costs or it should cost. I'm buying that shirt. And that's really what we have to overcome here. Don't get mad at Kim Kardashian. She gamed the system and she built a brand, and now she's going to have a new brand with Nike. So that's the reality here.
And I think that another part of the reaction out there from people is, hey, the whole SKIMS brand and Kim Kardashian's personal brand is based on looks, right? How you look. There's
sure.
it's not a performance thing. It's about looks. And whereas Nike is supposedly all about performance, and it's like the same conversation we have all the time about outdoor industry being a fashion industry. It's like, come on, folks. You don't think Nike has got anything to that the product is 100% about performance and nothing to do with how it looks or how it makes you look? Come on.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's and if you care that much, go to womenledwednesday.com. I believe the site is that our friend Cassie Abel was a founder of, and you can find lots of women-run companies in the apparel sector and other categories as well to shop from and make a real meaningful difference in their lives, and just ignore SKIMS altogether.
Exactly. And I know, by the way,
that's my advice.
And I'm sure almost all of those brands will have a much better sustainability record than you're going to find it anywhere else.
They'll be much more in line with your ethics, and everybody can be happy.
Yeah. Vote with your wallet, people.
All right, last story before we get to the next segment here. So our friends at Wolverine were in the news, and my thoughts on this were that any outdoor brand that's grown to a certain point, they kind of exhausted trying to acquire new customers that participate in that brand's core activity. They do the time-honored thing where they develop their quote-unquote lifestyle product and their lifestyle marketing strategy. And then after a while, they become too soft, and they get criticized for making too many cotton T-shirts or flip-flops. So then they pivot back. They announce that they're getting back to their roots and the customers that helped them find their original success, and this goes back and forth forever. For footwear maker Merrell, they just had a year-long reset with a focus on hiking, and now, apparently, according to the news this past week, it's time to head back to the mall, because in a recent post on SGB, Merrell CEO Chris Hufnagel was quoted as saying, quote, "You're going to begin to see and are seeing Merrell show up in a mall from a lifestyle perspective where we just haven't been for years." Oh, and I didn't know that Merrell had left the mall. But now they're going back.
No, in fairness, I mean, Merrell historically has been more of a hike brand. I mean, yes, you got your Jungle Monks and all that kind of stuff, but
they made our list.
I think that and they didn't call this out at all in the article. I think what they're talking about is really being more in the Foot Lockers and the Finish Lines of the world. And
JD Sports.
Yeah, exactly. So you're seeing them more in the sort of run lifestyle category, I think, is where they want to play. I mean, I think it's really interesting. In the same article, they were talking about their super shoe, the Speed Arc Surge, which is almost $300, right? And so
the Merrell
one, right? And
have you seen it?
I have not. No.
I saw it in Denver last week.
And
not a great looking shoe. And I swear I'm not just shitting on Merrell for the sake of no. Right. I sat there for a solid 10 minutes just looking at it, and it's rough. Now I don't know, maybe it was an early sample. I don't know if it's in the marketplace.
It's in the market.
Yet.
They said it's sold out quickly.
Then it's terrible.
Well, maybe you just aren't the target market for this shoe.
I don't think I am. I'm not. I am not a Merrell guy. Okay. Let's just be honest. I'll own that.
But so if I had to guess, I think that's what it is that, yes, so it's leaning more into run lifestyle as opposed to hike lifestyle, and having that kind of product to where, yes, we're going to have this, this sort of halo product with the Speed Arc or whatever, but then have that, go down from there to where we can compete with the Hokas and the Ons of the world, who, let's face it, it's a lot of lifestyle shoes for Hoka and On. So I think that's the play there with Merrell.
Yeah, well, but Merrell's been, I'm joking, but kind of not. I do see them as a softer outdoor brand, and they are a big outdoor brand. So I do expect to see them if I would go to some stores at the mall. So I'm joking, but not really. At the same time, they've been trying to be a running brand since the minimalist craze of the 2009-2010 era with the was it the Trail Glove? What was the name of their barefoot running line? I can't remember the name off the top of my head. We can look it up. But yeah, I mean, which has never gone away. They're always launching new running shoes to try and compete. And we're going to talk to another Wolverine brand, Saucony, in a second. But and look, I mean, I guess if it's a feast or famine thing for them, when they're doing well, it's all doing well, and then when they're down, which I mean is probably the case for a lot of folks. I just obviously somebody's buying them. Obviously, they're getting them placed in different retailers because they continue to pursue this avenue of running, and maybe it makes sense. I don't know. I just think of them as Jungle Mock and the Moab, and that's what I think of Merrell.
I think it's important for them not to lose that core in hike, but obviously this is their growth vector because hike is only going to take them so far.
Right. So speaking of run and Wolverine, Saucony was also in the news. A lot of Wolverine chatter in the news. So they were down overall 5% in the fourth quarter last year, but also this reporting has them forecasted as a bright spot for Wolverine. They had good performance in places like China. There's even in the U.S. there was some growth as well, and they also have their own super shoe coming from Saucony. Obviously, run does seem like there is no ceiling in run as a category. If there's it's the one real bright spot probably over the past 5 years. Like run continues to grow even if other outdoor categories are down or athletic categories are struggling.
I like to call it run lifestyle because let's face it, most of the quote unquote run product that's sold, never goes beyond 2 miles an hour. I mean, it's.
Right. So, I mean, what are you seeing for Saucony? I've always been a Saucony fan. I've always liked their shoes. They've always fit me well if I was wearing more road running style piece of footwear. And so maybe this can be a real bright spot for Wolverine over the coming year.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say is that 5% down number is misleading because they changed their model. I think it's in Asia to more of a licensing model. So, and when you go to more of a licensing model, the only revenue you get to recognize is the licensing revenue. So you don't get to recognize all of the product. So actually, when you take that out of the equation, they were up 7% year over year in the fourth quarter, which is solid. And by market, they were up in the low teens in the U.S. and up over 20% in Europe. So I think that's why they're excited. They're saying, we've really got something here. We're getting some really good traction. The brand is starting to resonate. And I think it does talk to the sort of the wider view within run or within run lifestyle is, people kind of want to have something a little bit different, which is what Nike's up against in a lot of ways, is that Nike just became the almost the Kleenex of footwear, and so now with the runs and the Hokas and the Sauconys, it's like, no, or even the New Balances, no, I want something different. I don't want to just be one of the herd. I want to have a shoe that maybe says that I'm a critical thinker about what I put on my feet.
Is Merrell making a super shoe? And I'm using this as an extension because Saucony making their own super shoe. And maybe we need to have Richard Kaczynski back on the podcast at some point. At what point do super shoes stop being super shoes? Because like everybody has a super shoe now. Like the Anu release from Deckers was their super shoe, right? I mean, is it just, it's becoming now so like watered down. Like if everybody has a super shoe, how many shoes are super? Right? It's kind of silly.
I think what makes a super shoe is the price. It seems like, right? It's just like you know, because for so many years, you just wouldn't think about having a shoe of over $200, right? That was just you know, I mean,
like 120 was like, ooh, yeah, that's a pretty expensive.
Exactly,
shoe,
150 was like really getting up there,
really high. Yeah.
And now, I mean, if your budget is $300, if you're in the $250 to $300 range, you've got, I don't know how many options, right? It's kind of wild. And part of it came obviously with the whole carbon fiber plate scenario, which obviously is an expensive piece of
that's
kit.
Like the marker of the super shoe, right? Is the carbon fiber plate.
Right, exactly. And so the funny part to me though is I don't know what kind of volume these brands do in the super shoes. Like who's buying these things? Because ultimately it's going to shave what? You know, like a minute off your PR in something, okay? And so,
I think less than that probably.
If I'm doing that, right, like I'm investing $300 in the super shoe to shave, let's say it's 2 minutes off my PR in a half marathon. At the end of the day, did I achieve anything other than just spend money? I don't know. I guess.
What do people spend money on now? Like when we were young, I mean, it was mostly like, what did we buy? Like magazines and beer? I mean, like, you know, is it because kids aren't drinking anymore that they're like, I'll spend $300 on a shoe? Like our only monthly expense is my phone and then I can buy expensive shoes? Like what's going on?
Do you really think though that kids are buying super shoes, or is it all, you know,
I don't know.
Gen Xers out there just looking to basically say, I'm running as fast today as I did when I was in my 30s. You know, or whatever the hell. I don't know. I'm not, you know, I haven't been running, you know, I blew out my knee. And so running is no longer in my future.
Well, good on you, Wolverine. I'm glad to see you. Like, look, you know, for as much as I'm making fun, like, good to see them healthy. I'm rooting for Saucony. Would like to see that brand. It's fun to see them back in the news. Asics, again, I saw them in the news. They had a good year. Like, so the kind of classic running brands doing okay. It's not just all Hoka and Ultra and, you know, the kind of the Nordas of the world. There's still life in the old guard yet.
Absolutely, and you know, Wolverine is a Michigan-based company like myself.
Here we go.
So pulling for those guys, it does seem like they've kind of found bottom a little bit from a sales perspective and really turned things around in terms of margins. I mean, a big part of this whole strategy was they're one of the few companies that had the courage to say, you know what, we are making too much shit. We're basically force feeding it to the market. We're force feeding it to retailers. We're force feeding it to consumers, and every sale has to be driven by a discount. And we're killing ourselves, and we're killing the brand and the planet, you could argue. And so they cut way back. I mean, you know, 30-40% in sales, right, to get to an equilibrium that was healthy and sustainable, both financially and environmentally. And now they're at that point. And they've rebuilt the balance sheet, they've rebuilt the margin profile, and now they're building back up again. So I think kudos to them for taking a pretty responsible approach that we're not seeing replicated throughout the industry.
I'm trying to decide if that's just like Michigan homerism going on here right now, or you know. No, you're right. You're absolutely right, and that needs to be applauded, even if I don't like your shoes. Good job, Wolverine. All right, that whole part, everything you just heard was brought to you by Garage Grown Gear, who is your hub for all things ultralight. Excuse me, I'm misreading the copy here. Garage Grown Gear is your hub for all things ultralight backpacking gear. If you're just starting out, they've got all the gear you need to get started. Or if you're a well-seasoned backpacker, they've got the gear to perfect the kit you've been working on for years. You don't have to be all in on ultralight to enjoy the benefits of ultralight gear to help lighten your load and simplify your pack. That way you can enjoy the great outdoors even more. Check out GGG via the link in the show notes, or just head over to garagegrowngear.com to check them out today. Always find interesting things over on G-Man Lloyd Vogel's website. You got to check it out.
It's time for a party shop.
Okay, we're going to do something a little different for the parting shot today, everyone. I'm going to give Owen my thoughts on something that I saw the other day, and I want to hear have him to sort of weigh in on my point of view. I mean, maybe the parting shot is sort of evolving to be a hot take that has to be approved or disapproved by the other Rock Fight co-hosts. Maybe that'll be like, we'll do it like a round table. You bring something, then we'll be like,
okay, all right.
Like we all sign off on it. Like, yeah, good parting shot, or no, you're out. We're kicking you to the curb on this one.
That parting shot missed the target.
I like this. This is good. Let's see how this goes. All right. So this past weekend, I opened up YouTube and I saw on my suggested feed a new video from Patagonia called "The Path to Removing PFAS," and I've linked that in the show notes. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But in this video, they detail the steps that Patagonia has taken to remove PFAS from their product line. Like many Patagonia videos, it's well made and shows members of their product and development team testing various fabrics and describing the technicalities of taking on such a task as removing PFAS from your line after so long. At the end of the video, they say that starting in spring 2025, all of their products will be made without intentionally added PFAS. The reason why this video is our parting shot today, though, isn't anything about that. It's the work this video does to position Patagonia as a brand leader on this front, which they certainly have not been. All right, there's a ton of nits to pick in this video, but the biggest one for me is it's the reality that PFAS has been a known problem since 2008. It's a problem that only a handful of outdoor brands have been publicly working on to address since then. So specifically, Fjällräven declared their intention to limit or eliminate PFAS in 2009, and Houdini announced that they were going to be PFAS-free in 2018. Keen did the same in 2022. Those are sort of the recognized three big names that were ahead of this. So my parting shot isn't at Patagonia for doing the good work. It's that this video positions them as a leader on this front when they are in fact a decade behind. And frankly, right there with all of the other brands who are now required to remove PFAS from their apparel line if they want to sell their goods in California, thanks to recently passed legislation that demands them to do so, which is the first domino, and hopefully that being the case everywhere. But the bottom line is this video feels like a brand trying to maintain their reputation as the environmental leader of our industry, to which I say, I think you should just acknowledge the truth, mention the other brands that were ahead of you on this one, pat them on the back and tell us what you are also doing instead of just trying to say, look, we are still leading here. We are the ones who have figured this out, which is really the vibe I got from watching this video. So, Owen, what were your thoughts?
And I think it's a valid criticism because they really haven't been a leader here. You know, it's really just this year, just now that they're basically PFAS free, which just happens to be when the legislation comes into play. You know, coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. But in the video, they actually make the point that, well, we would have done this anyway, even if we weren't forced into it by legislation. It's like, okay, cool.
Then why didn't
you do it? Right? Why didn't you do it? 5 years ago? I think a couple of things are interesting. One is, I think they had a false start because they went from C12, and not to get all technical here, but basically part of the way that these DWR, durable water repellent chemicals work is by these long chains of carbon, long carbon chains. So they were like C12, I think was the original. And so I think they had a false start, and they went to C6 or C8, so shorter chain, which was thought to be less damaging to the environment than C12. And then they ultimately figured out, actually, no, it's all bad. Basically, you've got to be C0. So I think they had a bit of a false start there. But a big part of the video focuses on just how many tests and fabrics and things they tested over the years, which is like, okay, cool. And the point being that they wanted to make sure that they could really replicate the performance of PFAS with non-PFAS waterproof treatment, which is okay, cool. But obviously others managed to do that. In the case of Houdini, 7 years before, right? So either Houdini, the product that Houdini had wasn't performing as well, or that was, and just Patagonia wasn't willing to use that, or maybe step up to the cost of whatever that solution was. Right, potentially. But I mean, if you're the brand that is putting the environment first, and the trade-off is 5% performance for way better impact on the environment, shouldn't you have been the brand that was most willing to make that trade-off early in the process? I don't know. That just seems like the way it would be.
That's my point of view on this, and that's why I think it was almost. I like to look at this as a missed opportunity for them. It's like this felt like a defensive video. Like we have to sort of we're still going to puff our chest out and say that we're leading here, when really the right thing to do would have just been kind of to cop to it. Again, because you're exactly right. You've been $1 billion brand for being on a decade now. If anybody had the opportunity to be able to afford maybe segments of line, like here's our PFAS free line that's not quite as good, but we still have a few things that have the old stuff on it while we're working on it. That could have been a whole story in of itself. I think that's to me what I'm struggling with the most, is because, if you say you're the leader in this, and everybody hides behind we want the same performance thing. REI did it too. Well, our customers demand it. It's like, no, your customers aren't demanding it. It's harder and more expensive for you to develop this. And I really have a tough time squaring.
And your whole supply chain is built around it. And you don't want to piss off Gore-Tex. I mean, yeah, there was a whole bunch of reasons not to do it. But the one reason was for the environment.
Absolutely.
Totally. And, I guess my point too is, instead of maybe producing this slick video, how about, I don't know, coming out against what's happening with the Department of the Interior? Like, where are you on that? Okay. So
would like to hear that too.
Yeah. Right. So, and that's one of the things I've loved about Patagonia, is that they have not been afraid to come out against things and to be in politicians' faces and to actively talk about voting down the politicians that are, doing the things to damage or not protect the environment. I don't know. It's odd that we're not hearing anything from them in possibly the most important time when people need to stand up. So it's a head scratcher.
I agree with you there as well. I mean, they mention it and I cringe every time I hear it. Like, oh, our mission is to save the planet. It's like, well, all of these things fall under that header. Like, you should have been ahead on PFAS. You should be denouncing anyone who's trying to ruin public lands. You should be denouncing people who are violating human rights or taking jobs away from people needlessly. These are all things to me that would fall under the banner of saving the planet. And I would like to hear more from that. Now, Matt Dwyer, who's in the video, who heads up the product development arm of Patagonia, I reached out to him. He and I are going to chat this week. I'm hoping maybe we bring him on the pod to kind of talk a little bit more about it, maybe get a little more context from those guys. I think I definitely would like to hear them. Hopefully he'll come on. We can address some of these things with him. He's on the product side, on the policy side. That's not going to be his expertise, but maybe we can get somebody else from Patagonia to come on, because I think it would be great to hear from someone there. Maybe, hey, Ryan Geller, do you want to come on the podcast?
Absolutely.
You're welcome. Open share. Let's do it.
And again, I think we're only calling this out just because Patagonia is recognized as the leader in our industry, right?
Like unanimously recognized.
And kudos to them. They have been that person, right? And they have driven that over the years. Love the brand, love what they've done there. But you got to be consistent. You've got to stick to those principles.
That's it. This is not about the good work that that team has done to remove PFAS. It's that just don't tell us that you're leading here. You didn't lead this one. And honestly, like, you might have a good reason why. Come and talk to us about it. But just, it was a little disingenuous. Let's be honest about where we are. Let's give these other brands the credit. They saw what was coming and they took care of it. So, all right. So you approve this parting shot.
On target, bullseye.
Yeah. All right. I'm thinking a sound effect in there. All right, well, we can wrap it up there today. Owen, we can everybody listening, come back on Wednesday to hear Justin Hausman and I run through outdoor adventure headlines, and on Friday for probably going to be a hot take this week from me. Check out the latest Rockfight podcast, the latest podcast on the Rockfight Podcast Network, Open Container. New episode goes up tomorrow on Tuesday. Check that out from Doug Schnitzbahn. The Rockfight is a production of Rockfight LLC. Our producer today was me, because Dave is apparently producing viruses this morning. Art direction provided by Sarah Wixie Wixerson, the Wixiest Wix and the Wild Wix Gensert. That's an inside joke. For Owen Comerford, I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And guys, he's back to take us out. Krista Makes, one of the lead singers in Less Than Jake, who just announced their summer tour. That this summer has 2 stops in San Diego. I got to see Less Than Jake twice this summer, and he's here to sing the Rockfight fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters. Rock fight!